Master Key with electricdollarbills.com. I'm here with another video for you guys. So I don't want to make this video long. I'm gonna make it really short actually. I just want to go over a couple of things. I was sitting and I was thinking about my first transaction, and I talk to so many people who just want to get to that first deal, just get that first deal done, get that first transaction out of the way, because that initial transaction gives you the confidence, gives you the know-how, and all of these type of things to help pivot you to the next level when it comes to being successful. So I was just thinking about my first transaction, and it was just crazy. It was a mess, and I say it was a mess just because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know my left from my right. But looking back, it actually went pretty well for me. And when I say my first transaction, I mean the first transaction that I actually successfully closed. Now you have to peep game. There were plenty of other properties that I didn't close on, that I wasn't successful at prior to and up until this point. It was even a car wash that I had that was a really good deal. I had a buyer for it and everything, and just me not knowing and not having the know-how and just not knowing simple things, the whole deal just crashed. I mean, the seller was ready, the buyer's ready. I actually had what was I thinking? I had a sit-down meeting with both of them. We were all sitting at a table having breakfast, myself, the seller, and the buyer, and they actually got into it, and that deal went left. So I wasn't successful at closing that car wash. And it's funny that I can laugh thinking back, but at the time I was, kind of upset, because it's like, shoot, ain't nothing funny about my bank account right now. This is not funny. But just thinking back over the years, and just thinking about my first transaction, and it's been a while. That was back in like 2015 when I closed my first transaction, and it's so different. My mindset about real estate and wholesaling in general is so different now, because I have so much experience and I've done so much when it comes to the space. So I just want to break down some things that I did terribly wrong on my first transaction. So I'm gonna tell you guys the lead how I generated the lead. It was off of a bandit sign. So at the time, I don't know what car I had, but I had some little car, and I was by myself. I didn't have a team. I didn't have anybody. I wasn't even was I in a relationship at the time? I can't recall if I was in a relationship at the time. I do think I was in a relationship at the time, but I don't know. It was probably myself. It might have been my partner, but the bandit signs got put up. We put the bandit signs up, or I rode around by myself. And how I would do it was, I would drive my car, I would get to the intersection, I would throw my hazards on, I would hop out, had a hammer, had a nail, boom, 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 put the bandit sign up, jump back in the car before the police or anybody who wanted to jump in and take my car come and jump in. And I was off to the races, to the next pole or whatever. And that's just how I do. And how I was taught to do it is you're supposed to do it like at night. Like, you want to do it from like 7 to later, because you want it to be dark outside, where the police isn't riding around. It's just not like a lot of traffic and rush hour, and you can get in trouble with the police and things like that. So you want to kind of do it after hours. But the only issue with that is, you hop it out your car and somebody can hop in your car. But I think I used to lock my door or whatever. I don't know. Be smart about it if you are going to do that way. But it's 2021. Not a lot of people do bandit signs. Bandit signs is good for some markets, not so good for others. So that's how I got the lead, bandit signs. So the homeowner called me, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. One of the most things that I think people go wrong in this business is we let our pride and our ego like drive our whole business. But I'll be honest with you, that seller could care less about me. He didn't care about me. He didn't care about me investing. He didn't care about no success. He had a problem, y'all. He had a problem, and he needed a solution, and that's all he cared about. He was ill. He was getting older. I know he was about 70, 80 years old. He was an old man. He was ill. His wife was, older and ill, and they had this house, and they had these tenants in this house that had been in this house for years, and he moved these tenants into the property based off of a friendship he had with the tenant's mother. So him and the tenant's mother was friends and he looked out for the tenant's mother by letting the tenant move in. Well, what happened was this tenant moved in and she stopped paying him money. Okay, so this tenant had been in here for years. She had her 2, 3, 4 kids living in there, and some of the kids were grown. They were like 16, 17, 18, maybe even older than that. They were adults. You know, she had people in and out. She didn't take care of the property. The property was in terrible shape. And the property just needed a lot of work. You know, he wasn't making any money off the house. He was still paying taxes and all these other bills. So this property was a headache to him. So that's a key factor you have to remember. When you're talking to sellers, it's about them. It's about solving their problem, and it's about helping them. It has nothing to do with you. So it's important that you remember that. You know, don't go in there and let your ego and all of this type of stuff just like take over. You have to realize that you have to help this person, okay? So he could care less about me, what I was doing. He wanted out. He wanted nothing to do with the property. He was sick of losing his money every month, every year. His ROI at that point was negative. It was in the red, so he was through. So I don't really recall what his asking price was, but I know we ended up agreeing on $6,000. And this area is an up-and-coming area. Is a decent area. Now, don't get me wrong. It is like the hood or whatever. It's not a war zone, but it's the hood. Let's just be clear. So we ended up negotiating. I got it under contract for $6,000. I marketed this property for a while. I wasn't getting any hits. Then I started showing it to buyers. I had several buyers come in and out of there, and nothing. I got some people who said they wanted to buy it. I had even teamed up with a couple of other wholesalers who were more experienced than me. Their buyers wasn't with it. And honestly, just thinking back to how the market was back then, it was nothing like it is now. Like, it was like not a lot of investors. It was not a lot of wholesalers. It was nobody doing it. Like, honestly, I don't even know how I ended up getting that deal. Like, why wouldn't he just call somebody else? Like, it was just like that back then. It just wasn't a lot going on. Obviously, it was people investing, but it wasn't like a lot going on. So he was riding down the street, probably riding past, leaving his property, just riding by, making sure they hadn't burnt the house down. He seen my bandit sign, which was in that area, and he gave me a call. So one of the things that I did wrong, I think I negotiated it pretty well. I got it at a good price. One of the things that I did wrong, well, we'll get to it. Let's keep going to the story. I don't want to jump around. So got under contract, started fishing it to buyers. No hits. So I just had to continue, and I sent it to a lot of people. Anybody who I can get who in any type of way had anything to do with real estating. I sent them the property. I mean, I was sending it to everybody. I mean, all over the place, and nothing. So I ended up getting creative. I had maybe heard about this somewhere, or maybe Googled it or something. I don't know. But I ended up getting on Craigslist, and I started reaching out to people who had properties listed for rent. So I said, well, if they got properties listed for rent, then they must be landlords, and they're probably interested in purchasing more properties. So I ended up calling a couple of those. One guy answered, or I don't think he did answer, but he called me back later. And I'm like, hey, I got this property, blah, blah, blah. I see that you have a property for rent in a similar area. Well, are you interested in buying? He happened to be a realtor, and he had a buyer who he did a lot of business with. Now, this realtor was doing 6 to 10 deals a month for a buyer that was actually out of Atlanta, Georgia. So he said, I'll come by, I'll check out the property, whatever. You know, so he came by. I remember how he hopped out, how the whole day thing played out. So he hopped out his car, you know, we shook hands, introduced ourselves, blah, blah, blah. You know, he pulled out like his iPad, I think it was. He had an iPad, or maybe it was his cell phone, but I'm almost sure it was an iPad. And he, you know, FaceTimed this buyer, and the buyer actually hopped on. Now, honestly, I've done a ton of transactions. This was the only person who really did it this way, okay? But it was really cool because the buyer, you know, this particular buyer wanted to be hands-on, so he wanted to be on the face call. So he FaceTimed him, walked around the house, you know, he showed him everything. He showed him the roof, walked around the whole exterior of the property, went inside the house, did everything. And later on, he ended up following up with me and said, hey, you know, and he kind of tried to play it real, you know, he was real cool, tried to play like, you know, he maybe once said he, you know, his offer isn't good. You know, I think he offered me like 8,000, maybe 8 or 9,000, 8 or 9,000, and I'm like, I'm gonna need it to be at least like 12 or something like that to make it work. So he ended up going back to the buyer, and we worked it out. And the deal, we did the, you know, we put into title and all of this type of stuff. I was excited. I had been through like similar processes on my wholesaling journey, so you never know if it's really going to go through until it goes through. Okay. So we went through the whole process. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I made on this transaction was I had no clue on how to assign this property. Now, I know as a wholesaler, we do assignments. That's just what we do. I know how to double close now. I've double closed. I know how to get consultant fees. You get paid that way. So these are 3 ways that you can get paid. I didn't have a clue on how to get paid. So I couldn't assign it. I didn't know what to do. So I ended up talking to the realtor guy. He happened to be a cool, okay type of guy. And he looked out for me. He ended up closing it under his name as a realtor, getting the whole fee. And he ended up meeting me at the bank when the transaction closed and gave me my portion of the cash. Now that was like a huge mistake that I made. I mean, especially if you think about how the market is now, like no way. You know, people will run off with your money. You never see that money again, you know. So that was a huge mistake that I made. That's why it's very important for you to know how to put paperwork into place to protect you. And because of that, I also made a big mistake because they were able to control the whole thing. They could have kicked me out. They could have kicked me out. They could have went to the seller behind my back and got it directly to him, you know, directly through him, and told him, oh, she's trying to do this or she's trying to do that. Like, that whole thing could have went left. But luckily, the stars were aligned and it worked out for me. But that's very dangerous territory. You don't want to do that, okay? So that's a big mistake that I made on that transaction. I also feel like the price, I feel like I could have got more. For that property. I think I definitely the offer I accepted, I think it was a lot less than what I should have got. But what I will say is, when you ask, you know, what should I list this for, how much is it worth, it's only worth what somebody will pay for it. Okay, so that's what they paid for it, obviously. So that is, you know, how it went. That's what I got. So that's just a little bit about my first transaction, the ups and downs. Oh, let me tell y'all this. This is one last big piece of it. You remember those problem tenants? Well, I've had similar properties close in a similar scenario. But this particular buyer said the only way he will close on the property is if when he purchased it is vacant. Vacant. Vacant, empty, no one there. How am I gonna solve this problem? The owner couldn't even get these people out the house. How am I supposed to get these people out the house? Negotiation skills, you guys, is super important. We problem solve. That's what we do. That's what we do. You have to get good at problem solving. So what I ended up having to do, I had built a little rapport with the tenant, you know, and you know, that's just kind of my personality, just sliding in and kind of being cool with her, you know, hearing her side of the story when she went to complain about the owner and how he's not fixing anything. I kind of listened and, you know, still kept it professional, but we had built a rapport. I kind of even built a rapport with her kids because her son would have to let me into the house to show it to buyers all the time. So I knew him and he knew me and whatever. So the buyer wasn't going to fund this transaction unless the property was vacant. So how can I get it vacant? So I had to negotiate with the tenant. I said, look, honey, the owner's selling the house. You gotta go. And I pretty much offered her to help her get out of the house. So I rented a U-Haul. I paid 2 of my family members to come help me move all her stuff out the house. And I even paid for a storage unit to move all her stuff in there. So I came out of pocket money before I had even made any money in real estate. And yes, this is a big risk. So that is a mistake that I made. It's a big risk. But also I want you guys to understand sometimes you have to do what you gotta do. And if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't. So all in all, I probably was out, see, like 100, maybe like $200, no more than $300. I want to say it was like $250 max that I ended up paying. But I ended up making thousands of dollars on the transaction, and even more important, I had got a win, so I knew how to do it because I had got it done. So in my mind, now I know that this actually works. So yeah, that is kind of how my first transaction went. It wasn't the smoothest, but I got it done. The seller was happy. He got rid of his headache problem. We ended up getting those tenants out. You know, she had to find a new place, and the buyer got his investment property. So it's a win-win. So that's the power of this business. If you want to learn more about wholesaling, I am hosting a free training in a couple weeks, and it's going to be private, invite only. So sign up. Let me know you're interested. I'll put a link in the description so you can go ahead and get on the list. And just keep an eye on your inbox, because I am going to be emailing you some information over, letting you know the dates, the times, and all that. And in this training, I'm going to break down step by step how I was able to make money in real estate, pretty much. Like from the beginning to the end, I'm going to go through the whole process with you guys, let you know how it works, what it takes. You know, we're going to go through everything. And then at the end of the training, we're going to do a Q&A, so you can get all of your questions answered personally by me. And we're gonna do it like that. So I'll see you guys on the next video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video if you got some content out of it, and share it with someone who you think will benefit from this information. So see you guys on the next one. Peace.